Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1991 music biopic film, The Doors. Now, before I get around to sharing my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Brian for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The link to all three is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Doors is directed by Oliver Stone. And for me personally, during his prime, he was in the top 5 or top 10 of best directors. And this film is no exception. This is still Stone right in the middle of his prime. And visually, this film is stunning at points. It really is. It's phenomenal. It's mesmerizing, but it's also frustrating at the same time because there's a lot of shots in this that just look incredible and really do elevate this movie. And the usage of camera angles and camera movement is tremendous. It's top notch and really well handled. But then there are other scenes where the direction is way too self-indulgent to the point of pretentiousness and to the point where it really affects the pacing of a scene. So you'll have quite a few scenes in this film visually that'll make you go, wow, like that is so cool, and that is such a dazzling shot, and look at the way that he transitioned this one scene to the next, and look at the way that he shot this scene, and he incorporated green screen and did all these different things. And then there'll be other scenes where you're like, this is ridiculous, this is almost to the point of parody. Like, what is going on here? Or you'll have scenes that just drag on forever because of the overindulgence, the just overabundance of ego-driven shots by Oliver Stone. This is Stone at his most egotistical and his most self-absorbed. And at points, that can be kind of hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. At other points, it leads to some really amazing and awe-inspiring and awesome direction. It's one of those weird movies where one of the film's biggest strengths is also one of its biggest weaknesses. It's like this movie, in a lot of ways, has such a lasting legacy and resonance and power with people who have seen it because of its visual strengths. But it's also something that hurts the movie and makes it feel like it's 4 hours long. So it's one of those wild instances where the director's ability and their talent and their weaknesses collide all in one film. Now, the film is written by Oliver Stone and J. Randall Johnson. And this screenplay is an absolute drunken mess, which is fitting for a movie about Jim Morrison, because that's really, in a lot of ways, what Jim Morrison was for a good chunk of his time on this earth. But that doesn't make for a very good screenplay. From the very beginning, it's way off in terms of its tone with this scene with a young Jim Morrison seeing a car accident with some Native Americans. And then that establishes a bunch of Native Americans popping in and out throughout the movie. I understand it's supposed to symbolize Jim Morrison's shaman thing that he was known for, but the way that it's presented and the way that it's implemented here is completely ridiculous. It is silly and it's impossible to take seriously. And then you have Jim Morrison and his whole way that he meets the love of his life. And maybe this is how it actually happened in real life when it comes to how he met Pamela. But the way that it's set up, it's creepy. He comes across like a creepy stalker who saw Pam one day, liked her, thought she was hot, followed her to her home, hung out in a tree, and actually snuck into her house. Like that is some stalker, creepy serial killer shit, and it's presented as if it's like romantic because he said some poetry. I'm like, no, this guy is off his rocker. Why is she wanting to be with this guy? He's a nice looking guy, but at the same time, like, there's always red flags. And if the way that he meets Pam isn't bad enough, then you get the way that he meets his band. He just decides that he wants to sing because he went to film school, made a movie, a bunch of people thought it was pretentious. He didn't want to hear that, so then he quit, and then he decided to become a singer. I think he was friends with Robbie Krieger. Actually, it wasn't Robbie Krieger. It was Ray Manzarek. Ray Manzarek was a friend and colleague of his from the film school who liked his movie. They became friends, and Jim shared his poetry with Manzarek. Manzarek was like, "Hey, you ever thought about writing lyrics?" And then they decided to create a band. And Jim came up with the name The Doors based on a quote from some philosopher. And other than Ray Manzarek and him having been a student at the film school that Jim went to, you don't have any other extra detail or depth for any of the other members of the band. So they just become total afterthoughts. They become completely unimportant to the story when it comes to John Densmore and Robbie Krieger. There's a little bit that happens near the end when they are resistant towards Jim's antics and whatever, but not much else other than that when it comes to their involvement in the plot or in the story. And for a film called The Doors, that is really disappointing. I wanted to know more about the other members of the band. Yeah, I get it. Jim is charismatic and he's the enigmatic leader of the band. And I get why they want to put more of a focus on him. But that doesn't mean that you don't have any focus at all on the other band members. In a movie called The Doors, this isn't called Morrison, it's called The Doors. And it seems like the only door that they even open up a little bit is the one that has Jim Morrison behind it. When it comes to the other members of the band, the doors are locked. And the stuff with Jim, it's at its best and most interesting when it gets really wild and over the top, minus the shaman stuff, the Native American stuff, because that was just weird. And honestly, I think it was completely unnecessary and distracting. Or the desert scene when they're all high and they're talking about riding the snake. But when you get to, stuff like the relationship that Jim has with this reporter, Patricia, and it's very weird and occulty because she's also a witch. Like that was definitely something that threw me for a loop and was really quite fascinating. The scenes with Jim being just over the top on stage, the bit where he gets arrested, uh, and him being a drunken mess later on in the movie, stuff like that. That is definitely more compelling stuff in the movie for me is when you have things just getting really wild and out of control and kind of crazy. And even the desert scene, even though I think that went on way too long, it still has its moments where it was also interesting in its own trippy way. So I definitely do feel that there is some good in this script for sure, but there's a lot of bad. The whole way that Jim and Patricia's relationship continues throughout the film, it really didn't paint either of them in the best light. It showed them as enablers, it showed them as people who were very immature. It also showed a side of Jim that was very destructive and honestly uh, uh, messed up and beyond controversial. I mean, the guy almost lit his girlfriend on fire. He locked her in a closet, lit it on fire. Like that is some really awful behavior to say the least, and very abusive. But she still got back together with him. She was still with him all the way to the end. And the script didn't really delve that much into why she stuck with him. Other than, "Oh, I love it when you say poetry to me." Like it just that felt very shallow, very hollow, very empty, and nowhere near as compelling as it should have been in terms of this whole dynamic. Like, why is she still with this guy? He cheated on her. She was upset about that, but she still kept being with him. She's trying to hint at him to get married, but it doesn't seem like he really ever commits to that. Him just saying "you're my girl" and quoting poetry, and then she'll melt like a puddle. Like it just, I don't know. Maybe that's exactly how the dynamic was between the two of them, but even if that was the case, that's not very interesting. And for a movie that's already taking a lot of creative liberties in terms of things that happened, like what happened on the Ed Sullivan show, you can take some more creative liberties here and make this relationship feel more fleshed out and feel less like something you would see in a soap opera, and make it a lot less Stockholm syndrome-y, you know? Give it a little bit more balance. Give Pamela more of a character and more of an arc and more of a spine, other than her saying, "You ruined my Thanksgiving." And there's other subplots too that go nowhere, like this stuff with Tom Baker, who's this movie star who becomes friends with Jim, and that subplot went absolutely nowhere and did not need to be in the movie. It felt like it was only there so Billy Idol can have a cameo because he was friends with Michael Madsen's character, Tom Baker. The uh the whole stuff with Andy Warhol was fun. I honestly would have rather have seen more with that than more with Tom Baker, because that didn't really provide anything. At least the stuff with Andy Warhol was trippy and weird and offbeat and interesting in its own way. Um, tonally, this script is just also way off, and it's not just with the Native American stuff. It's also with an entire sex scene with Jim and Pamela that has the music, the classical piece of music that you would hear in a bunch of trailers. So the music that they used in the cliffhanger trailer, you know, that goes something like this. Dun 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 dun. And then it ends like like that is the music that plays during a sex scene, and Jim climaxes to the end of that classical piece of music. That was so overwrought and so over the top. It was just mind-blowing to me. I could not even my jaw dropped. I could not even believe what I was watching. I was like, "What?" And there's a lot of that, like, even the whole dinner scene, the Thanksgiving scene that goes awry because Jim is just an absolute mess and throws a fit and gets abusive towards Pam. That's supposed to be an intense and harrowing scene, and the tone just felt off all the way through as if it was unintentionally funny. Like, there's a lot of moments like that in this movie where I don't think you're supposed to be laughing or you're supposed to be feeling a certain way, but it makes you feel that way. And that's just a sign of a poor tone when it comes to the screenplay. And like I said, the way that everything unfolds, it follows the timeline decently enough, but it's not that interesting unless there's moments of bizarreness and weirdness or some kind of shocking controversy. Other than that, it's pretty dull and boring because there's nothing that's really uh, making the story go. There's nothing driving it other than seeing more scenes of Jim Morrison doing Jim Morrison things or more songs by the Doors. Like that's really about it. Even by the end of it, when it comes to his last on stage performance where he's a drunken mess and it's a total debacle, and then the other album that they did, the last album they did before he died, and him going to him almost committing suicide, and then his ultimate death. Like, these are all things that you should feel more than what you actually do because of just the way that everything is written and the way that it's structured. After a certain point, it really loses you, and you're just not that emotionally invested. And I think in large parts because it did a bad job of making the band as a whole feel like a concrete thing. It did a bad job making the Doors as a band feel like this special unit, this special group of people with their own unique talents. There's only so much you can do when it comes to showing the debauchery of your lead singer before that gets really old and really annoying, to be honest, because that's what your main focus is on. You're kind of like, can we go away from Jim for a little bit? I'm getting a little too much Jim Morrison. Can I get to know the other members of the band? Please? Can I get to know them at all? Because I never really felt like I ever got to know any of the other members of the band, The Doors, in The Doors. That's a problem. How about you focus less on the silly shaman shit and give me more about the other band members? How about you actually show a little bit more involving their last album together? And how they came up with some of the songs and how they created it instead of just this very brief thing. It's the last album that they did together. Why isn't that a bigger deal than it is? Stuff like that. It seems like there's a lot of things that Jim Morrison did or a lot of stuff that happened with the band that's put in the forefront in front of things that I feel should have been more important and more vital to their story. Especially since this all happened in a very short amount of time. Uh, it really isn't something that I think was that difficult to do. It's not like you're dealing with 10, 20, 30 years of this band's existence. They had a prime that was like a few years. Like, you could do a better job in terms of showcasing what happened with the band and the entire band's highs and their lows, not just the highs and the lows of Jim Morrison. So yeah, this screenplay, yeah, I do. I feel it's an absolute mess. It's bizarre, it's weird, and at points that does help it maintain your interest, but at other points, it doesn't do it any favors because it just becomes really hard to take seriously. And in a lot of ways, it kind of undermines a lot of the movie. It just makes it feel like it's more of a parody of The Doors than actually a movie that is trying to be an honest and loving tribute to the band, warts and all. So the screenplay, definitely not the best. The cast, here's the thing about this cast. To me, as a whole, it's flawed and inconsistent, but it has some major stars. And the biggest one is definitely Val Kilmer, the late Val Kilmer, who, by the way, passed away recently, and may he rest in peace. Definitely missed. I mean, this film is just one example of many of just how incredibly talented Val was. A really underrated actor. If you really look at his filmography and you see the variety of roles that he played and he pulled off, it is genuinely amazing when it comes to his range. And he was talented in other ways too. He could sing, and he sang the majority of the vocals for this. The only time he didn't sing is when there were certain shots that they used, but most of the movie, it is Val Kilmer singing the songs, singing like Jim Morrison and doing a convincing job. Val not only looks the part, but he also sounds the part when it comes to his vocals. This is a genuinely dazzling and dynamic and just really strong performance by Val. Uh, it was just the kind of performance that you couldn't take your eyes off of. As flawed as this movie is, as messy of a screenplay as this film has, as disappointing as certain aspects of this movie ultimately are, Val Kilmer, because of his power, because of his strength as a performer in this, almost made it something that was not as much of a detriment to the film as a whole. Like he elevated the film. If you had a different performer, a different actor, it wouldn't be as good. It wouldn't be as tolerable because despite the fact that he's playing such an insufferable prick for most of the movie, he's doing such a great job. He's doing such an amazing job in terms of portraying this particular rendition of Jim Morrison that it becomes a performance that is genuinely iconic and incredible and just has a lot of layers and nuance to it, and it is in my opinion absolutely one of the best performances that any actor has ever done for a biopic when it comes to playing a real life person, especially a musician. uh Legitimately, genuinely, even Oscar worthy. Like I honestly feel that way when it comes to Val Kilmer's performance in this film. But the rest of the cast, it's not anywhere near on the same level. They come across more like bit players in comparison to Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison. But it's not entirely their fault. I mean, I can't really say that Kevin Dillon and Kyle MacLachlan and Frank Whaley did a bad job when it comes to playing their roles, playing John Densmore and Robbie Krieger and Ray Manzarek. I can't really say that they did a particularly bad job playing these characters. They did what they could with what they had, which was next to nothing. When you have Kyle MacLachlan in your cast and he leaves no impression and he just seems like he's any other actor or performer, you've got a problem. Because there's no reason why somebody as uniquely talented as Kyle MacLachlan should come across like just another guy. Now, when it comes to other people that weren't a part of the band, I felt that they had their moments, especially Kathleen Quinlan as Patricia, one of the best performances of her career, to be honest. She bared everything in this and played a very wild role that is very against the usual kind of role that she's known for, and really pulled it off. And in my opinion, was arguably the next best performer uh, after Val Kilmer. Meg Ryan, I like Meg Ryan. I appreciate and I respect her decision to try to break out of the typecasting role and do something different as Pamela. But she was just miscast. This was just not the right role for her. She has the energy of a rom-com for this character, and it doesn't fit for this movie. And it really undermines and hurts a lot of the scenes with her and Val. Crispin Glover was only in it for one scene, but he made a massive impact and a pretty significant impression as Andy Warhol. Just genius and perfect casting. Oh, you Crispin Glover, who's a well-known weirdo to play another well-known weirdo. Perfect casting. Um, the whole other supporting cast roles, like Michael Madsen as Tom Baker, Jennifer Rubin as Edie Sedgwick, uh, Mimi Rogers as a magazine photographer, Billy Idol as some guy named Kat, Kelly Hu is Dorothy, um, Michael Wincott, who plays Paul A. Rothschild. There's some great supporting actors in this. Some have more screen time than others, but they definitely make the most out of it, including other people like Dennis Berkeley, who played a character named Dog, or John Capodici, who plays Jerry, or Josh Evans as Bill Sidons. So it's a cast that has a lot of talented performers in it playing various different roles, including Oliver Stone himself, who has a cameo in this as I believe the UCLA film professor. But it's Val Kilmer who's the star of the show, and he alone is really the main reason why I think this film still has a cult following among people who aren't already massive fans of the band The Doors, because of how great and how good he was in the film. Now, the film also features some genuinely impressive technical elements. I mean, the cinematography by Robert Richardson is wonderful. It's definitely something that fits the tone and the vibe and the feel of the movie, very psychedelic at points, but also uh, genuinely stunning in its own right, vivid in terms of its visuals. The editing by David Brenner and Joe Hushting, I think at points it adds to the overall trippy vibe and the larger than life feel of the movie, but then at other points it makes a lot of the film drag even more than it already does because of the way that it's directed. So I feel the editing could have been tighter. It really could have been, because at points it's a little too loose, or it's just not really honed in as much as it should have been. The score, there really isn't a score. It's just music by The Doors, which is absolutely the right choice in a movie called The Doors. Just use Doors songs, and the songs are utilized well. They're good choices. They fit the tone of the scenes, and they definitely do add to the movie because they're some genuinely great songs. But if you want to listen to those songs, you can listen to them without watching the movie. And honestly, I personally would say that would be a more consistently engaging and fun experience to listen to some of the best that the Doors have to offer than to watch this movie. There's a reason why this film didn't do well critically when it came out, and there's also a reason why it didn't really do that well financially, because of the fact that it is just such a wild, uneven, messy movie that is got way too much excess in a multitude of different ways. And it's excessive in ways that are detrimental to the film and really take the viewer out of it and really hurt the overall enjoyment or engagement of the movie. Uh, it's almost to the point where even though I really do like some of Oliver Stone's direction in this, I often wonder if this film would have been better without him being involved with it at all. A different filmmaker, he's not co-writing it. You still have Val Kilmer, you still have the same cast, but Oliver Stone is not involved with it at all. I think that I feel would have been better for this film in the long run, even though there are some great bits of directing that arguably genuinely could be some shots that only a director of the caliber of Stone could actually pull off around this time. But I'm willing to sacrifice those shots for a better movie. But that's just me personally. I know this film has some fans, and I know there's some people who actually rank it as one of Stone's best. To me, this is one of his weaker films. It's always been that to me. I much prefer other films that he's done, like Platoon, Born on the Fourth of July, uh, and Wall Street, and even other movies that are like not as well received or don't have as big of a cult following. Like I legitimately like something along the lines of Any Given Sunday more than The Doors. And of course something like uh uh JFK or even Natural Born Killers, even though I do have issues with that, or Talk Radio or Salvador. Even his horror film he did in the early 80s, The Hand with Michael Caine, I would say I liked more than The Doors. From his prime, this was his weakest film. Other than maybe Heaven and Earth, because I really wasn't big on that either. But if we're comparing The Doors to some of his later films, yeah, it's better than Savages and Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, and Alexander and Snowden, but that's not saying much. It's still not on par with Stone's best work as a filmmaker and as a director. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on The Doors. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.